This is an introduction to Revit 2020. We're using the default New Zealand install of Revit 2020, which comes with the standard templates and file structure. This is the screen you land on when you first open Revit 2020. It allows us to open and create new models and families, and access on the right hand side here to models and families that we have previously opened. Models generally are the project you're working on within Revit, the building file, and families are a subcomponent of those files, which we can create outside of the normal Revit model framework and bring into our models to enhance them. So families generally include things such as furniture, symbols that we need to create that we can use on multiple projects and multiple models, but they're created separately. We'll cover those a little bit later. So let's just start off by creating a new model in Revit. We click on the new button here and we get this little pop-up window. This gives us access to templates that are by default loaded with Revit 2020. If we drop down this menu, we have 4 templates to choose from. Depending on the type of model or drawing that you're doing, you would pick a template. We're going to pick the architectural template and make sure the project button is clicked and click on OK. And this then takes us into the Revit main window. I'm going to give a brief overview of the user interface for Revit 2020, describe various parts of the window, what you can see, and also explain what some of the icons and buttons do. A lot of the detail about specific items within this user interface I'll deal with in a later video, but for now I just want to give an overview of where things are, how things work, how it's laid out, and what different sections of the user interface do. So we'll start with the main drawing window in the middle here. It's basically made up of the white piece of screen that you can see and the tab that lives above it. As we open new views or sheets within Revit, these tabs will pile up along this grey line here, and we'll have quick access to various views just by clicking on the tab. Then just switch to that view straight away and work on it. So if I just create another view just quickly, so we can see now we have a 3D view with a new tab. The tab that's active is white, that shows us which view we're currently in, and we can click on the other tab there and go straight to that view. If we want to zoom in to the window, to the drawing, we just use the mouse wheel and we can zoom in and out. Bear in mind that the zoom is centered on wherever the cursor is located. So if I move the cursor to the right hand side and zoom, I zoom over in that direction. If I move the cursor to the left hand side, it zooms in that direction. If we wish to pan the model around, we push the center mouse wheel button in and we can drag the model around. So we'll just start by looking at the icons around the central drawing window, and we'll start right at the very top of the screen. Along the top left hand side here we have a series of icons. These are quick access icons and buttons, and they access tools which are located elsewhere within Revit, but these just give you a quick way of getting hold of them and accessing them from any location within Revit. So we have things up here such as the print icon. We can save files, we can open files, we can create a 3D view, some sections, elevations, add some text, those kinds of things. So these are kind of handy if you're looking for something and you know that it's a quick access icon. You can get to it no matter what you're doing within Revit. The other one worth noting here is the home button over here. This will take us back to the splash screen that we landed on within Revit. This gives us quick access to previously opened files and projects, and it shows a graphical representation of what those projects look like. If we just click on the home button again, we go back to the main screen. While we're on that, if you click on the file button that's directly below that, the blue button, this opens the file menu, and like most file menus in Windows, gives you access to open, save, export, print, those kinds of things. And again, on the right hand side we have a list of recently used or accessed models and families. These are not graphically shown, so if you need a graphic representation to see which file you want to open, you'll have to go back to the home button up here, and that will give you that graphic representation. While we're in this window, the other thing I would encourage you to do is if you click on the option button down the bottom, it opens up another window. This is where we can modify the options and settings for Revit on a global basis. The one that I want you to look at is the save reminder interval at the top. By default I think it's set to 30 minutes. I would recommend you change that to 15 minutes. This is the time limit that Revit will let you work before reminding you that you should save the file. I recommend that you save the file as often as possible, so 15 minutes is probably a good time for those reminders. So click on OK and that will set the 15-minute reminder time. And we're back to the main screen. The next part of the window that we're going to look at is this section. Across the very top we have a series of pieces of text or tabs, and underneath that we have a series of icons and labels. This is what Revit refers to as the ribbon, and it's where most of the drawing tools and modelling tools are located. I'm going to go into detail in a separate video about the ribbon itself and the tools that are located and how they work, but just be aware this is where they are located. We have a series of tabs across the top that we can click on. As we click on the tabs, the icons underneath change. These icons are grouped into what Revit believes will be a logical sequence for what you're working on. Say for example, if you're in architecture, these are the modelling tools. So generally anything to do with modelling the building will be located in here, whereas on the annotate tab, these relate more to noting and putting text and dimensions onto your drawings. So Revit groups those into logical sequences, and you also notice that under each main ribbon there's also little sub boxes that show different sections and give labels as to what those icons generally relate to. The other thing I'll say about the ribbon at this stage is if you hover over any icon in Revit, including the ones in the ribbon, you'll get a brief description of the tool and a 2-letter shortcut, keyboard shortcut, and then if you hover over for longer you get a more detailed explanation of what the tool will do. So for example, if I hover over the column, initially it comes up with structural column CL. CL is the keyboard shortcut, and if we hover over for longer we get a more detailed description and a graphic representation of what the tool will do. Now some of these tools have little videos attached, so if we hover over this one, you'll see there's a little video that appears at the bottom of the screen and again shows us how to use the tool that we're hovering over. This applies to most of the icons within Revit. You can hover over them and you'll get a little description and then an expansion on that description. The next area that I want to talk about and explain is the properties box over here and the project browser underneath. When you first open Revit up, they look like panels. They're not actually attached in the same way that the ribbon is to the top of the screen. These are actually floating boxes, but by default they locate themselves on the left hand side and stack one above the other. But if I want to move these, I just grab the top of those and I can drag them off the side and relocate them elsewhere in the window. Now these are one of the few things that you can actually put on a second monitor within Revit. If you wish to locate them on a second monitor and use them over there, you can do so. Bear in mind that if you go back to a computer with a single monitor, you may lose the location where those boxes are and you may have to refine them again. So we can reshape and resize these two panels to suit ourselves. I generally have them laid out like this with the properties box on the left and the project browser on the right, but you can sort those to suit yourself depending on how big your project is and how you want to work. Some people put them both on the right hand side, some people put them both on the left hand side, and I know other people who locate them along the bottom of the screen. So these are customizable, and as I say, you can drag them to make them as big or small as you want. So if we start with the properties box, this box gives us all the information about the view we're in or the object that we have selected. So by default at the moment we've got no object selected within Revit, so it's telling me the information about the view that I'm in. Now according to the tab at the top, I'm in a level 1 floor plan, and this is giving me the properties for that view. It's telling me we've got a scale of 1 to 50 and all the other information that relates to the way the view looks at the moment. Now this box will change depending on what you're doing and which object you have selected. For example, if I click on the grid line here, it's now giving me the properties for the grid, but you can see there's not actually a lot of information in there about the grid line itself. These boxes are also two-way. We can change the information in the properties box and it will affect the object, or we can change the information on the object and it will affect the properties in the box. So if I want to change the name of that grid to 3, I just type 3 in there in its name and it changes it on the drawing. I can change it back to 1 So these are interactive boxes, and we can edit most of the items, unless it's grayed out, most of the items in this property box, and we can change the settings within this property box. As I said, it by default will show you the information on the view, so if you've got nothing selected, you're looking at the information for the view itself. So I can change the scale of the drawing there, I can change it back again, I can edit all those various things. The one little anomaly or oddity with the box is that if I select an elevation, these elevation markers in Revit, they're made up of two parts. One is the central circle and the other is the actual arrow that represents the elevation itself. If I click on that elevation marker there, you'll see we've now got a blue line representing the line where the elevation is cutting through the model, and the information in the properties box now tells us about the view itself. It tells us about the elevation that we've just selected. It doesn't tell us about the marker, it's telling us about the actual elevational view. So within this, I can actually change the scale of the view of the elevation without having to open that elevation, and I can change the settings for that elevation without having to open it. So just be aware that when you click on the elevation view or a section view, you are seeing the properties for the elevation, the view itself, not the object that you've selected. And while we're selecting objects, I'll just explain that if you hover over an object in Revit, it will give you its little box with a name on it to tell you what it is that you're hovering over. So before you select anything, you can actually see what the object is that you are hovering over, and you can select it. So we'll cover the properties box and all the information that various objects have within it, because every object will have a different set of information within the properties box, and we'll cover that in detail later. The other box that we've got here is the project browser. This box contains all of the views and sheets within the project, within the model, and we can access all of those directly from that. So at the moment, as I said, according to the tab, we're in level 1 as a floor plan. You can see that this level 1 floor plan is bold, and we're in the floor plan folder within the project. We also by default in the template have a level 2 floor plan, which we can double click on and open, and a site plan as well. And as we select those, they change, so you can see whatever one is in bold is the current view you're looking at. We also by default have some ceiling plans created, some 3D views, elevations, and some other items at the very bottom of the project browser here. As I said, this project browser contains all the items that are located or contained within the project, and we have a group of families. Now I'll touch briefly on what families are. These are components that you bring into Revit into your project but get created outside the normal Revit framework. So inside here, this tells us all of the families that are currently in the model. So we have some annotation symbols, we have some doors. If I expand these, you can see that we can actually access these directly, and it just gives us a list of all the items that are within the model. Generally, you'll only go into there and access those when you need to tweak or change something. Generally, we will keep that one closed, but it's worth noting that's where the families live, and all the items that you have in the model are located in the project browser. Right, the next area of the screen that I will look at is the bottom right hand corner here. We have some more icons. Again, these are quick access icons that are located other places within Revit, so they're just located here. If you need to use them, you can have a look and see what they are. You may find it easier to find them down here as opposed to the ribbon. I tend to use the ribbon for 95% of what I'm doing, or I use the keyboard shortcuts to access the tools. And then we have the first of the reminders. Let's just come up and ask me if I want to save the project. If I do, I just click on save the project and it will save it. This being the first time, it'll actually ask me for a name, etc. Or if I don't want to save it, I can just click on cancel and the reminder will disappear. Also at the bottom of the screen, we have a couple of other boxes. I'm not going to touch on those. We'll deal with those much later in the course. But the other thing to note on the bottom line here is we have this click to select tab for alternatives, control adds, shifts, unselects. This is by default and it's telling you how you can select objects within Revit. But if I hover over an object in Revit, you'll see that now changes and it tells me the name of the object that I'm hovering over. So this can be handy if you're hovering over something and you're not sure, the little descriptive box next to the cursor doesn't pop up for some reason. You can actually see what it is you're hovering over at the bottom of the screen. So in terms of selections, we have multiple ways of selecting objects within Revit. If we hover over an object and click it, it selects. If we hit escape or click away, it deselects the object. If we select the object and hold down the control key and select another object, we have them both selected at the same time. If we wish to select multiple objects by grouping them, we can draw boxes within the viewing window. If we draw a box, we drag and draw a box from the top left to the bottom right, it will select objects that are completely within the window, within the box. If we draw a box from the bottom right to the top left, it will select objects that cross that box anywhere. So you can see here we have the grid line selected even though it doesn't actually fall completely within the box. It's crossing the box, therefore it gets selected. So this is a quick way of selecting multiple objects within Revit. The other key that's worth noting is if you have two objects which are close to each other or on top of each other and you hover over one but Revit won't let you get the one you want. It's not highlighting it so you can't select it. And if I click on this, I'll click this vertical grid line, but I actually want the horizontal grid line. If you hit the tab key, it will select other objects within the vicinity of the cursor. So you can cycle through the selection and then click on it to pick the one you want to select. The tab key is very important in Revit when it's selecting, because often you have multiple objects within each other or next to each other, and the tab key allows you to cycle through those objects and then pick the one you want. Okay, the last series of icons that I'll look at in this video are along the second to bottom line here of Revit. So let's start with the bottom left. We have the scale. This is the scale of the view, and all of these icons along this row here relate to the way the view looks. These are view by view changes and alterations that you can make. So they do not affect other views, they only affect the view that you currently have open and active. So if I go back to level 1 here, I'm just going to very quickly create a little building to demonstrate how these tools work and the view modes change. I've just drawn a very quick little house here that we can use to explain the view modes and the way that Revit shows different views. This is the 3D view of it. We have a roof, we have some walls and a floor, and if we go back to our level 1 floor plan, we can see we've got a floor plan. And we can see the edge of the slab, and this is an example where tab is useful for selections. By default, when I hover over this, the door being the nearest to the camera, if you like, gets picked up as being the object that I want to select. But I can actually see the edge of the floor slab underneath. If I hit the tab key, it will cycle through the objects that are nearby. It picks up the wall next, and if I click again on tab, I can then see the floor, and I can select the floor slab at the very bottom. The other way to use tab for selections is if I click on an object that is connected to other objects, in this case the wall, and I hit tab, it will actually pick up all the connected walls in one selection. Again, this is a very quick, easy way of picking up objects that are all connected or related to each other. And if I don't want that, I just hit escape. But I can select all the walls very quickly. So we go back down to the bottom left hand side here. We can change the scale of this view by clicking on that scale icon, and we can change it to 1 to 100 or whatever we want. Also note that in the properties box up here, it's changed to 1 to 100 as well. We can change it back to 1 to 50 there, and it will change the number down here. So these two are linked together, and one of 3 or 4 places you can change the scale of a view. The next icon to the right is the detail level for the view. So within Revit, we have objects that have lots of detailed information in them, but don't necessarily want them to show all that on every view. So by default, we have the detail level set to medium. This shows a checkerboard kind of icon here. If I click on that icon, we get 3 choices for the detail level. we get coarse, we get medium, or we get fine. So if I just have a look at the moment in the medium level, which is what we have currently for this view, we can see the three components that make up the wall. We've got some timber in the middle, we've got some linear weatherboard on the outside, and some chipboard on the inside. We can also see the door jamb, the door leaf, and the swing for the door. Click on that detail level icon and I change that to coarse. Coarse is a lesser level of detail. And you can see now we've lost the information about what the components are that make up the wall. We just get a single outline of the wall, and we've lost the door jamb, and we've lost the door leaf. So this is giving us a very basic representation of the floor plan, but it may be suitable for a view that you're using depending on who is looking at it and what you want to portray. So it just gives an outline. So coarse gives a very low level of detail for the objects. If I flick that back to medium, we see we get the door jamb back, the leaf. It's worth noting that even if we have coarse view level, these objects are still present within the model, they're just not visible in the view. So they don't disappear, they don't go anywhere. The way Revit just represents them is much more simple. So we're back to our medium view. If I change that to a fine view, you'll see we still have the door leaf, the jamb, the wall components are still there. We've now got two architraves and a door planted stop. Again, these objects have always been there in the model, we just couldn't see them in the view. So this gives us a more detailed look at the door and the way that it is constructed. The other thing to note is that you can actually dimension to these architraves. Say I want to dimension those. Drag those numbers out a little bit. So we can see we've dimensioned the architrave and the gap at the end of the architrave. If I flick the view mode or detail level back to medium, that architrave disappears, but the dimensions are still there. So just be aware that sometimes you can dimension objects that then disappear when you change the detail level, and it leaves your dimensions and notes isolated. So this changes the way the view looks based on a detail level. If I go back to my 3D view, we can change it in here. Again, these are view by view changes. So if we change the detail level in this view, it doesn't affect any other view other than the one we're in. So again, this detail level, we've got the door handle, we can see the door jamb poking through, and we've got the wall shown there. If I change that to fine, again, we get the architraves appearing, and that's pretty much the only change we have. So for most of what you're doing and most views within a project, medium is fine. Sorry, medium is okay for the detail level for the view. But there may be instances where you want a more detailed view. Say for example you are drawing just the jamb plan of the door and you want to show where the architraves are and dimension them. You change the view level to fine and you'll be able to see all those components. Again, it is changing the view, it is not changing the model in any way. We're just seeing things that are currently in the medium view are hidden. The next icon to that is the visual style. Currently it is set to hidden line. If we hover over it, we can see it says hidden line and it has a box that has hidden lines. So if we go back to our 3D view, again this is also in a hidden line style, and we can't see through the objects, they're solid, so it's hiding lines. All we can see is the faces, and the faces are blocking whatever is behind them. If we click on this icon, we get a range of choices. At the top we have a graphic display option. We can click on that. That will open a separate box and I'll cover that right at the end. But we have other options. So we're currently in hidden line view. If I click on the wireframe view, all the objects become see-through and we can see all the lines of all the objects. Now you can probably see this very quickly becomes a little confusing if you have lots of objects and everything's see-through. you can actually get quite confused as to what you're looking at, especially if your 3D view is kind of flat. It's very hard to tell what's in front and what's behind. But it is handy for seeing things that are behind walls or roofs that you need to access and select. So one of the main reasons that you would use hidden line view is to access or select things that are hidden behind other objects, or to see what's in behind things. For example, at the moment I can select the door that's in the back here. By hovering over it I can select it, hit tab a couple of times, because I can see the door through the other walls. If I just delete the roof to make things a little clearer in what I'm saying, if I change the view back to a hidden line view and I rotate the view so that I can't actually see that door anymore, Revit won't let me access or select that door. I can't see the door, therefore Revit won't let me pick it. I can select this one, I can select the wall, and I can select the wall that the door is in at the back, but I can't actually select the door. If I change the view slightly to see the door, I can now select it. So often if you've got a view and you've got walls that are blocking other objects, the only way to find them and look at them is to change to a wireframe view, and now see that door in the back and select it. The other views in this list are more to do with rendering and displayed drawings or visual drawings. We can do some shading, we can create something with more consistent shade colours. We can create a view that has a realistic look, so this will generate like wood grain for the weatherboards, kind of a plaster look to the jib board, or we can create a ray trace 3D model, which we don't tend to do that much. So hidden line is the default and probably the view style that we use most often. At the top of that little menu I said there was a graphics display option. If we click on this, this brings up another little box, and this has a lot of little tweaks that we can do to the way the view looks, and again depending on what style we're using or detail level, it will change the way the view looks. So for example, first off, and again another example of Revit having more than one way to change things, we've got our hidden line style here. If we change that to wireframe and click apply, our view will change to wireframe, and if I click OK, the icon down here goes back to wireframe as well, and we can change it back to hidden line that way. So it allows us to tweak the view style within this box as well. The additional control we have here is we can actually adjust the transparency of the walls even though we're in hidden line view. So if I change the transparency to 20%, we can start to see a little bit through the walls. I can increase that transparency and the walls and everything becomes more transparent, to eventually, if I change it to 100% transparency, I've effectively got a wireframe view. So it allows us to create views where we can partially see through objects and see what's behind them. We'll reset that back to 0 transparency and click OK. That box contains all sorts of other changes and tweaks to the way the view looks, some of which we'll touch on very quickly, but there are other things in there that you may want to change to make the view look slightly different. The next icon to the right here is the sun path. This allows us to do sun studies and create shading diagrams to show how the movement of the sun around the building goes during the day and create shadows. We don't tend to use that a lot, but it's there if you need to do a sun path or a sun study. So the next icon to the right is the shadows icon. If we click on that, we turn the shadows on in the view that we're in. At the moment it has a little red cross which indicates the shadows are off, but if we click on that, we generate shadows. Now in this default way it's set up, the sun is always coming from the same direction relative to the view, so even if we rotate the model, the shadows still point in the same direction. So we can create some very quick, simple shadows to show how the sun falls or would fall on our building. Again, if we go back into the visual style icon and up to the graphics display options, we've got a panel in here called shadows, and this cast shadows is now ticked. Previously it was unticked, and because we've turned the shadows on, it's now ticked. If we untick that and apply it, those shadows disappear. Click OK, and our icon down here goes back to the one with the red cross next to it to indicate the shadows are not on anymore. So we can adjust the shadows within that box. We can turn them on and off. Further down we have a lighting panel within the graphics display options, and we can adjust the strength and brightness of the shadows from this slider here where it has shadows. So I can make the shadows less prominent or more prominent, depending on what suits. So this box here has the controls on how the shadows work. The icon to turn the shadows on and off is just down there. So we'll turn the shadows back off for that view. The icon next to that is a rendering dialog. Again, if your visual style is a ray traced render, this rendering dialog will allow you to adjust the information you need to get the view looking right. The icon next to that is the crop view, and the one next to that again is the show the crop region. This is another important concept within Revit. By default, you can see this icon here, the crop view, has a little red cross next to it. That indicates that the crop view is not activated. Our view is uncropped. And we can basically extend walls and draw objects as far as we want to either side of the view, and they will never crop or be chopped off. If I activate that by clicking on the crop view icon, the little red cross disappears and the icon changes to show that our crop is now on. But we can't actually see where the crop is at the moment. The button next to that, or the icon next to that, that show the crop region, if we click on that, that shows us where the crop is for the view. So at the moment we haven't hit the crop with any of our walls, but I can actually extend those walls out past the crop region, and the walls appear to disappear once they hit that box. I can turn that box off again and the crop still stays there. The walls are still cropped at the same point, we just can't see the box that forms that edge. If I leave the crop region turned on and uncrop the view, we can now see the wall outside of that crop box. So this allows us to change the amount of information we can see in any view and create smaller views of parts of floor plans or small buildings within a bigger project, or parts of a wall, part of a door, etc. We can adjust the size of the crop region box by clicking on the box itself, and we get these little blue dots that appear in the middle of each side, and little squiggly lines that appear as well. If we wish to change the size of the box, we just click and drag on one of those control points, one of the blue dots, and we can make the box smaller or bigger to suit what we want. Now again, we have got the crop region shown, that's what we're looking at, but the view itself is uncropped. If I click on that crop, you can see that all the walls outside that box have disappeared, and I can now turn the box off itself, and we get this nice clean view where it shows only what we want it to see. So that's the crop region. And the last two icons that we're going to look at are these two here, the pair of glasses and the light bulb. These icons to the right of that I'm not going to cover. We don't tend to use them that much, but if you want to explore what they do, feel free. Sunglasses and the light bulb kind of work in tandem, and to understand how these work and what they do, we need to explain a concept within Revit to do with how things are organized. So we've drawn some walls, we've drawn some doors, we did have a roof. Within Revit, items that are similar or the same are put into the same category. So this wall here is in the same category as this wall here. Even if it was a different type of wall, they still be grouped together as walls. And we can select those categories or items based on which group they're in. We can also hide and turn those off. So we don't have layers in Revit, but we use categories to turn things on and off within a view and to hide objects. Now we can do that on a permanent basis within the view. I can hide a wall just by selecting it, right clicking it, and hide it in its view, hide the element, and the wall will disappear from the view. Again, the wall is still there, we just can't see it in this view, and I can't select it. So now that I've hidden it and I can't see it, how do I get it back again if I want it back? This little light bulb icon here will reveal hidden elements in the view. If I click on the light bulb, you can see we've now got a red box around our view, and the object that is hidden, the wall I hid just before, is now red in colour. All the other objects in the view that are not hidden are grey, so we can clearly see which objects are hidden and not. If I want to unhide that object and bring it back to visibility again, select the object, right click, unhide in view, and unhide it by its element. Now that I've done that, that wall's now gone back to grey, which shows that it's not hidden anymore, and if I unclick the light bulb, we go back to the normal view and we can see that we can see this wall again. If I wish to hide all the doors in the view, if I select one of the doors and I right click on that door and I go to hide in view, I can hide its element. It's just the one item that I've selected. Or I can select to hide by its category. As I said before, all the doors in the project are in the same category. They're door. And if I click on hide all the objects in the category, all the doors will disappear. So this allows us very quickly to turn on and off objects and hide them within the view to get the view looking the way we want. Now again, if I want to bring those doors back to visibility, I can't see them anymore, so I can't see them, I can't select them. If I click on the light bulb, I can now see all my doors in red. If I select one door, right click, unhide in view, unhide the category, all those doors come back, and I untick the light bulb, and I can see all the doors again. So this is how we control the way views look and objects within views that we don't want to see or we do want to see. We use hide by element or hide by category, and we turn off the things that we don't want to be visible. For the times where you might want to just temporarily hide an object or isolate an object to work on it, and there's a lot of other clutter going on, so like this, and you really want to see the whole of that door to work on it, but you can't at the moment. You don't want to change the way the view looks, change the angle of the view. So we have the sunglasses or the glasses icon down here. This allows us to temporarily hide or isolate an object. So if I select my door again and I click on the glasses, I get four options. I can isolate the category, which will isolate all of the doors and hide everything else. I can hide the category, that will hide all the doors temporarily. I can isolate the element, which will show just that one element and hide everything else. Or I can hide the element itself. Now this is a temporary change, it's not the way we hid it just before, and this is just something you may want to do while you're working on a view and just want to isolate one object. So if I isolate the element, first thing you'll notice is we have a blue box around our view now. This indicates we're in a temporary hide or isolate situation, so that we know that we're not in the normal view. So I now have this door, I can look around the door, I can do what I want to the door. When I've finished working on it and doing what I want to bring everything back again, if I click on the glasses again, I can reset the temporary hide and isolate, and it will bring the view back to everything being visible. Again, I can do the same thing, click on the object, click on the glasses, I can hide the category, which will temporarily hide the doors, and I can do what I need to do, click on the glasses, reset that, and again we get a reminder, and the doors come back again. If you decide that you want to temporarily hide that door, let's just do that. We will hide the element, and we're in this blue box situation. If I click on the sunglasses, we have another option at the very top, so we can apply those changes to the view on a permanent basis. So if I apply that hidden door to the view, the blue box disappears. We're now back in the normal view mode, but we have no door. If I click on the light bulb to show the hidden elements, the door is hidden, and it's hidden within the view on a permanent basis. But I can right click and hide in view, and hide the element, and then undo the light bulb, and we're back to our normal view. So this is how we hide and show objects temporarily or permanently within Revit and the view. Again, this is a view by view change. If I hide that door and I go to my floor plan, the door is still there, we can still see it, we just can't see it in the 3D view. So that's about all I want to cover on the user interface for Revit. As I say, we'll go into more detail about the ribbon and the properties box as we need to, but that covers the user interface for Revit 2020.